Hello and welcome to Cycle 6, which will be starting on 9/23 and running through 9/29, which is my husband's birthday, so I'll have to make sure as I'm grading all your work, I wish him a happy birthday. All right, so our weekly agenda, posted in the same place each week, going down to Cycle 6. So once again, focusing on what do you need to do, and then later what's going to get graded. So we're actually moving on to Unit 2, which is really going to focus on the writing process. We're starting to gear up towards a much larger writing assignment than the paragraph we did last cycle. So Lesson 1 is going to be an overview of the writing process, the steps we should be going through. Lesson 2 is going to start getting into how we plan, so looking at interest and how that can help us with our topics, the purpose behind our writing, audience, and form. So these are both lessons in schools PLP. This is something that's new. We're going to have a reading, a short story by Amy Tan called Fish Cheeks, and this will be found in CommonLit. And the cycles, starting the cycle and going forward, we'll have some different reading assignments that are going to help us with that bigger writing assignment towards the end of the quarter. So 3 different lessons, 2 in schools PLP, 1 in CommonLit, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Down here are the assessments, what's going to get graded and what they are worth. So Lesson 1, Lesson 2 in schools PLP will get you 10 points each. Same thing for our short story. There'll be 6 multiple choice questions in there and 1 short answer response. And I'll kind of give you an overview of that in just a moment. So to get to CommonLit, you want to go to wherever it is that you can go and find your schools PLP, your Blackboard. It's been called Adaptive Centrify with the new laptops. At the bottom of your screen, somewhere down here, there's a gray cube people are able to log into to get to this point. You'll want to type in Common up here, and there probably are 2 items that will pull up. So we want the just CommonLit, not the testing. So when you click on that, you may need to sign in using Clever. So you'll click on that. It may take a second to get logged in, and then your assignment will show up here. So like I said, it's a pretty short story. So I'm scrolling through here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs for a short story, and even in there, they're pretty short. You'll have these multiple choice questions over here, and a feature you'll notice is sometimes they refer you to a paragraph. If you click on that paragraph, it'll take you back to that section. And then when you get to question 7, there's going to be a short answer response. So think a paragraph, that's what we were working on in the last cycle. So Mr. Murway and myself will give you some pointers on how to structure that. And those tips are going to be posted in course content, cycle 6. Down here, I pulled that question out, and we'll give you guys some help later with how you rephrase it, with some lead-in sentences for how to structure that when you get to the short answer response. The other important item that I want to go ahead and point out before we get into an overview of the schools PLP is this writing assignment. So it says Quarter 1 expository essay, and the topic is going to focus on identity. So I don't want to go into too much detail yet, but your writing prompts, so you understand what you need to be thinking about as you're reading the stories and as you're looking at the writing process, is going to be on this prompt. So drawing from at least 4 sources explored in Quarter 1, and we're starting with that Fish Cheek story. That's the first reading you'll pull from. Answer the following question. How do groups and individuals form their identity? So Fish Cheeks is really going to focus on culture and how that could be a part of someone's identity.
So as we start to look at Lesson 1, it's a pretty short one. And this deals with the writing process, which Ms. Godfrey, Ms. Potts, and myself, and all of the junior English teachers have already covered a little bit with the 4-sentence writing assignment. And in this lesson, you guys are talking about and learning about the writing process itself. So if you scroll down, you will see a lot of words that mimic what we already talked about, like organization and focus, conventions related to some of the other PLP lessons. And you might see a few new ones like voice and viewpoint, but these concepts are all very, very similar to what you've already been exposed to in other lessons and our writing assignment. You'll notice again that it's very similar here, where it talks about the 5 steps of the writing process. So in the initial stage, you have planning, You have drafting when you first write it before you do any editing, revising, checking, which jumps you into some of those same words. So you have 3, revising your work. You have editing your work, which for the 4-sentence assignment was the last category and will always be a category on any assignment that we assign that deals with writing. And the publishing is you submitting your assignment into Blackboard, or Ms. Godfrey, myself, or any other English teacher presenting it, or you presenting it to the school or any other format like that. So then you will have your questions related to that terminology. Remember, I'm not going to hop over there and do it, but make sure you're utilizing the Control F function for any term-based question. And I think there is only one matching, which again is very heavy and just matching vocabulary from up top to with whatever's right next to it. So after lesson 1, this one's pretty sequential. It shoots you into lesson 2, which again is very similar to the writing process that we already talked about a little bit. So there's 4 parts for this one. There's making sure you select something that's interesting to you, making sure you have your topic picked, making sure there's the reason why or purpose behind your writing, and making sure you're writing for a specific audience. This one's a little bit different. As Ms. Godfrey went over, we are providing the topic to you, so you don't have to really worry about researching what to write about, although you will do that later. But for this first longer writing assignment, you already have that provided to you, so you don't really have to worry about that. For this, although the PLP covers those first 2, we're going to focus more on purpose and audience, so there's more to come when I get down there a little bit. Here at the top, the vocabulary, similar to the first lesson that I just went over, might have some words that you're not so familiar with, like rhetorical patterns. So pay very close attention to rhetoric and rhetorical patterns, because there are terms that we haven't covered that you'll have questions about later. You'll have a few sections that have brief overviews of what it's like to start writing and what the beginning of the writing process looks like. And then after you've answered those questions, it will give you some strategies related to how you're exploring your own interests, but again, we're not doing that yet because you have a topic picked for you and a genre or style of writing picked for you. This one is a scroller, so you're going to have to go down quite a bit. So although we have selected a topic for you related to identity, there are some very important terms or questions to ask yourself as you're beginning that writing process and that actual written assignment. So for example, identity. You don't want to just search identity because you will have too much information or an overabundance of information, and you will have scatterbrain. You won't really know what's good or where to go or what to click. Just like you don't want to have it be too narrow. So if our broad topic is identity, you don't want to have hair color related to your physical identity, because there's only going to be such a small piece of information related to somebody's identity and their hair color. So you're looking to kind of shoot the gap and go right in between those two, and Ms. Godfrey, Ms. Potts, and myself will kind of coach you guys through that. Scrolling down a little bit, you'll have questions related to all of those concepts I just addressed. Here, you will have the different rhetorical purposes, and the 4 main ones are stated right here: explain, persuade, entertain, and express. So making sure that you're familiar with those terms, because throughout the 11th grade curriculum, and even a little bit next year as a senior, you will do each type of writing. So make sure you're slowing down here, because those things weren't necessarily covered in other PLP lessons or that 4-sentence assignment. Audience is always important to consider, because other classmates, your teachers, those are the people reading this. However, as you're experiencing writing more and more, your writing's definitely going to change if you're writing for a 10-year-old versus a teacher in your 11th grade class. Your word choice is going to change, how it looks, even the size of it, the form, everything's going to change, so make sure your audience or who is reading what you are writing is always considered. And PLP does a nice job of asking you some questions related to audience as you're thinking about how you want it to look, what words you're using, those types of questions. You'll have a tiny little section, we were laughing about this, a tiny section about choosing a form. So that would be whether you're writing a short story or an essay for English class or a speech even. Those are the different forms of writing. I guess this one would technically fall under essay, or even like research paper is where you're mainly going to be focusing for your first major writing assignment in English. We're not really doing any creative writing yet. So just keep that in mind that your form is going to change throughout the year, and we're starting with those two as our focus. And I think you only have one matching section of 6 or 7 right there related to the different writing plan topics. Other than that, you guys should be in pretty good shape.